I didn't hear you come in. Taking refuge from the storm outside, are we? Well, no worries. I have just the thing to pass the time. I was just about to read a story of a young man who finds himself bored with his small town until he finds a strange house that's been abandoned. Curious about the house, he decides to do some research on it, only to realize some things are better left alone and forgotten. So please, make yourself comfortable, and I shall share this tale with you, and hopefully, by then, the storm will have passed. Now, let's get spooky. We all have that one thing that we keep close to ourselves after a family member has passed away. For me, it was my mother's cross. She had given it to me the day that she died, and told me that as long as I had it, she would always be with me. I'd promised her that I'd always keep it near me. And a few months after her passing, I moved to a new town. I've lived here for a couple of years since then, and after being here for that long, I've come to the conclusion that my town is quite possibly the most boring town in existence. Part of me always knew that this place would be mostly uneventful, but now it's gotten to the point where I'm dying for anything exciting to happen. Still, I promised myself that I'd keep my eyes open for anything interesting, something to break up the usual day-to-day routine. One day, I was out taking pictures at my local park, and on my way home I decided to take another route back to my place. Mostly I travel the same way every time I'm out, but today I felt a little bit more adventurous. It was then that I saw a house that I've never seen before, or if I ever did, I never bothered to pay any attention to it. I could tell it hadn't been lived in for years, because this house was in such a state of disrepair. Paint was chipping away everywhere you looked. The grass on the front lawn had grown to insane heights compared to the neighbor's lawn, vines completely engulfing the right side of the building. Windows were cracked and filthy, and the roof was damn near ready to collapse. On the left side of the door read the numbers 623. If this is how the outside looks, then I can only imagine what the inside was like. It felt dirty just looking at it, but also was curious about it at the same time. It was then that I knew I had to learn more. It was around 6 p.m., which wasn't too late to try to knock on the neighbor's door and ask him about the house. I was hoping that the neighbors on either side of the house could give me some insight about the people who actually lived there, and if not, then I'd maybe ask what happened to the original owners. I walked up to the first house, which was a nice blue color. I knocked on the door, and a little boy that looked about 7 or 8 answered a few seconds later. Hi, I need to speak to an adult. Could you send your parents out here, maybe? I said, feeling so weird. The kid just stared back at me, which didn't help ease the uncomfortable situation at all. Tommy, who's at the door? I heard a voice call out, that I assumed belonged to the boy's mom. Oh, we have a visitor. Tommy, go ahead and get back inside. I'll take care of things from here, she said, coming into view. She looked very young, almost my age it seemed. You'll have to excuse my little brother. He can be very shy. I was so caught up in my own thoughts that I almost didn't answer. It's okay. I really didn't expect him to chat it up with a complete stranger. She smiled a little as I continued. Well, anyway, I'm sure you're wondering why I'm bothering you today. I don't know if you'd be the person to ask, but I was curious about this house here. I motioned to the building next to us. Can't say that I do. We've only lived here a few months, and it's been abandoned for as long as we've been here. Never seen anyone enter or leave. Well, that's one question answered. No one actually lives there, huh? I'll ask the other neighbors then. Thanks for your help anyway. I waved as I walked off her porch. I was pretty happy that she was willing to cooperate. I just hoped that the next neighbor would do so as well. Approaching the other house, I noticed it wasn't as nice as the other one. It looked a bit older, with a faded tan color and a basic brown roof. I walked up the steps and opened the screen door and knocked. I could hear slow, soft shuffling from the other side. The door opened, and the little old lady looked up at me. In a slow, raspy voice, she asked me, "What can I do for you, darling?" "Hi, I have some questions about the house here," I said as I pointed to her vacant neighbor. "Huh. Well, come inside, young man. I'll tell you what I know." We headed inside, and I felt fairly comfortable. The same feeling you get when you visit your grandparents. Safe, protected, all that good stuff. She had me sit down on this firm but comfortable gray sofa. "Let me grab you some water before we begin," she said as she shuffled into the kitchen. I was too polite to decline her offer, and besides, it's always good to drink plenty of water. Around her living room were various paintings of old farmhouses, animals, and beautiful landscapes of nature. A lovely brown coffee table sat in the front of me, and beyond that was a nice velvet chair. I could hear a radio in the distance. It was playing classical, which I should have guessed. The rug beneath me also had a pretty nice design, multiple colors forming different shapes. I wonder if she lived here alone. "Here you go, sweetie." "Thank you. I appreciate this. So, whatever you want to start, I'm more than ready to listen." I felt kind of bad for coming off a little rude and rushing her into the story. It's just I wasn't sure how long this story was going to last, and I really wanted to take a peek inside that house before it got too dark. Of course. Now, let's see here. It was about 50 years ago. A young boy and his sister were playing in their front yard. They played for a bit when the boy threw his ball a little too far. It landed in the yard of the house in question. "Well, Bill, you did it now," the young girl said, smirking smugly. "Shut up, Cassie. Just help me get it." "No way. Mom and Dad would kill us. You know they don't want us going near that house." "But Grandpa gave me that ball. Besides, what's so dangerous about it anyway? No one lives there, so what's the big deal?" They both stood there for a bit when Bill finally walked over to the front lawn. "I ain't scared. You can stay here, you big baby," Bill scoffed. Cassie, being the older sister, didn't want her little brother holding this over her. If word got out that he braved the creepy house and she didn't, it would ruin her social life. She sped past him, making sure she got there first. "Here's your dumb ball. But you know..." She paused, hatching up a little scheme. "If you really aren't scared, I dare you to go up to the window there and look in." Bill paused for a moment and came up with a better plan. "I'll just open the door and walk in." Bill stomped up the stairs of the porch and looked back at his sister. He gave her a victorious smile and turned back to face the door. Bill felt something as he touched the handle, an overwhelming feeling that he should run. But he couldn't, not after teasing his sister like that. He gulped and started turning the handle, and the door slowly creaked open. A disgusting smell rushed out and made Bill gag. After he composed himself, he squinted down the dark hall that the doorway revealed. And despite it being sunny out, hardly any light could pierce through the darkness. Just before he walked away, feeling accomplished, he heard something, a dog whimpering softly. With what little light came through, he saw a small dog emerge from the dark. "Cassie, it's Rudy. He's been here the whole time." Rudy was Bill's Christmas present a couple years back. One night the dog had ran out of the house and was never found. Until now, it seemed. "No way, that's not funny. Stop trying to spook me," Cassie yelled. Before she could say anything else, Bill ran in, shouting Rudy's name. Almost immediately after he ran inside, Cassie heard a loud crash. "Bill!" Cassie wasted no time getting through the lawn and up the porch. Inside, she saw a large hole in the middle of the hallway. It had given out due to Bill's weight. "Cassie, are you up there?" "I'm here, Bill. Give me your hand." She reached down, but Bill still couldn't reach. Using some of the rubble as a makeshift stool, he was able to grab her hand. Is Rudy okay? I don't see him down here with me. As Cassie used all her strength to pull up Bill, she looked forward, and instead of seeing the lost dog, she saw something else entirely. It was only a head peering around the corner, a large head with 2 white eyes with no eyelids, topped off with 2 long pointed ears. It looked at her with an expression of confusion, as if it was surprised that she could see it. That expression soon turned to one of anger. It let out a loud hiss, baring its large, sharp fangs. A long arm reached from around the corner and slammed down at the floor. It started to crawl toward her. Cassie screamed, and in her intense fear, she lost her grip of Bill. Any progress that he had made coming up from the hole was undone. She looked back down at her brother, seeing his face, one of sheer terror and worry, and she whispered, "I'm sorry." She turned and ran for the door, tears streaming down her face as she heard Bill scream her name repeatedly before being silenced abruptly. She ran to her parents and told them everything that happened. The police were called to investigate the grim mystery. They searched and searched the house, but couldn't find any trace of Bill, the monster, or even the hole in the hallway. They ended the search, saying that he had most likely been abducted, and with no other leads, there wasn't much more that they could do. Not long after that, a man from the city came to condemn the house and went to put a notice on the door. However, according to multiple witnesses, as the man got to the door, he saw something in the window. Something that made him yell out, "No, it can't be! It's impossible!" He ran away from the house in tears and never returned. Word eventually spread that what he saw was his wife. His wife that had died in a car accident years ago. After that happened, everyone who lived around there avoided the building, never interacting with it, out of fear they'll end up seeing something that will drive them insane. "Wow, what a story," I said as she finished. "Indeed it is, my dear boy. Do you believe it, though? Do you think people actually saw things in that house, or do you think it's just an urban legend?" The old lady paused for a moment before looking at the clock. "Oh my, look at the time. You best get home before it gets too dark." And she was right. Even though I didn't 100% buy the story, it was still creepy enough for me not to want to be alone in the dark. I said my goodbyes and I left. Walking by the house, a cold shiver ran down my spine. I stopped to really look at it. I thought to myself, long and hard, I just had to know. My curious mind wouldn't let me rest until I knew for sure. I mustered all the courage I had and headed up to the door. The house was creepy enough, but added with that story and the coming night sky, the entire atmosphere was amplified to insane levels of terror. I pulled out my phone to use the flashlight and swung open the door. The smell the lady described was spot on, even made my eyes water a bit. Shining the light revealed a dirty hallway with a destroyed staircase to the left, a door to the right, and another corridor at the end of the hall. The hole described in the story wasn't there, but there was no shortage of damage from the ceiling and walls. So far, I hadn't seen anything. Just then, I heard the creak of a floorboard, followed by a hand touching my shoulder. I quickly turned to find the girl from earlier. "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to scare you," she said as she started to laugh. "Yeah, you got me good. Sorry, I don't think I ever got your name." "Kat, and you are?" "Name's Rodney. Now that we're properly acquainted, what exactly are you doing out here?" "Well, I wanted to take a look at this house after I got Tommy to bed. You were already here, so I figured I'd tag along." She seemed pretty enthusiastic, but I wonder if she'd still be that way if she heard the same story that I heard. Still, I wasn't going to complain about somebody else being here with me. We both began to head in. The atmosphere was intense. There was no sound other than our own footsteps and breathing. I couldn't tell you why we stayed in there for as long as we did. I suppose we were so absorbed in everything that we just had to take it all in. I started thinking, what if we explored the house? Then we could prove that there was no danger, and maybe bring some peace of mind to some of the residents here. We could be Mythbusters, and honestly, I liked the sound of that title. Despite the creepiness of it all, it was a little exhilarating to be doing this. We walked in a bit further. I got to the door on the right, and before I turned the handle, a voice could be heard from above us. Cat. We both looked up and saw Tommy on the second floor. Tommy, my God, what the hell are you doing here? He sheepishly said, I saw you guys come in here and I wanted to be part of your adventure. I thought it would be fun. Cat responded, No, Tommy, you shouldn't be here. This place is dangerous. There are too many sharp edges and weak foundations for you to be sneaking around like that. Get down here now. We're leaving. Let's go. His face soon turned from a guilty expression into a frustrated one. Ever since Mom and Dad died, you never want me around for anything. Even I felt the emotional sting of that one. I know what it's like to lose a parent. Still, he didn't need to lash out at her like that. She was just trying to protect him after all. Before either of us could react, he got up and ran off into the darkness as Kat began to scream for him. We gotta get up there somehow. Here, give me a boost and I'll grab him real quick, she said, but I hesitated. I immediately thought of Bill, and part of me thought this was some illusion. But there was no way I could explain this to Kat in a quick way. I mean, a house that causes you to hallucinate? It was pretty far-fetched. Plus, if this was real, and Tommy was actually here, I'd feel terrible if something happened to that kid, just because of my superstitions. I snapped out of my thoughts just in time before Kat got too angry with me for not helping her. She climbed up to the second floor as I kept her feet balanced. Once she got up there, she turned to look back at me. I'm not sure how you'll get up here, but try to find another way up, okay? And if you can't, just wait for us here and help us down, okay? All right, will do. She nodded and disappeared into the darkness. I stood there for a few seconds, thinking of which way could lead upstairs. I thought a sizable house like this has got to have another way up. I turned back to the door I was inspecting earlier and made my way towards it. I figured I'd check out what was in here before continuing down the hall. Opening the door, I peeked my head in quickly to examine the room with my phone light illuminating everything. Much like the hall, the room was falling apart. Every square inch was covered in dust and cobwebs. The smell got worse as I proceeded further into the room. When I got to about the center, I noticed Kat's footsteps upstairs were very faint, unusually so. With how quiet and decrepit this house was, I would have thought her footsteps would be louder. I didn't dwell on this thought for too long, however, because something else was starting to bother me. I had an intense feeling of being watched. I was sure I was alone in this room. There wasn't a whole lot to hide behind if there was another person in the house with us. Still, I just couldn't shake off that feeling. I kept looking around until I got to the point where the feeling was so overwhelming. I spun around to head back out into the hallway when I was met face to face with my mom. Rodney, my dear, I'm so happy to see you again. Mom? Tears began to swell up in my eyes. I didn't believe it at first, but she looked so real, exactly as she did the day before she died. This couldn't be an illusion, but how else could she be here? My mother, who has been dead for years now, was standing before me. Soon, happiness and excitement started to take over any fear I had. How are you here? I said, voice cracking after each word. This place, it connects the spirit world with yours. It allows those who have passed to communicate with the living. It all made sense now. Or at least, as far as the supernatural goes. people in that story saw dead loved ones. Bill and his dog, the man and his wife, and now me with my own mother. One thing I still didn't understand was that girl, Cassie. What did she see? Maybe she saw a demon or something like that. And what happened to Bill? How come they never found him? I pushed these questions in the back of my mind. Right now, the only thing I cared about was being able to talk with my mother once again. Come with me, son. Let's catch up with what's been happening in your life. She extended her hand, and I slowly made my way toward her as my legs were weak due to the emotional intensity of it all. Before I got to her, I remembered I had her cross in my pocket. I always kept it with me, to have her near me at all times. I wanted her to see that I never forgot her, and that I always kept her gift with me. I was sure she'd be so happy. Look, Mom, I still have your cross. I pulled it out of my pocket and held it up to her. But when she saw it, she let out an ear-piercing screech. Her mouth opened in such an unnatural way and her eyes turned into sunken holes. I didn't know what to think. My head was starting to spin, which caused me to fall to the ground. What was once my mother was now some horrid, nightmarish version of her. She stopped her screaming and slowly faded into dust, which made its way up into the ceiling and disappeared through any hole or crack it could squeeze into. I laid there in silence before breaking down completely. When I finally pulled myself together, I noticed I was in the fetal position. I don't know how long I was like that, but I did know that I needed to get out of here. I needed to get upstairs, and I needed to find Kat. And seeing that what just occurred, I started to question if Tommy was actually Tommy. If he was like my fake mother, then Kat is in danger. I reached over and grabbed my phone, and with the light, I noticed something beside me. Something was covered in dust that I wouldn't have been able to see had I not been inches away from it. I picked it up, wiped it, and began examining it. It was a note, old and slightly withered, but luckily still readable. To whoever finds this, it's more than likely it has gotten me. Leave this house now. If you see anything or anyone that wasn't with you upon entering, then don't listen to them. These illusions, they'll say or do whatever it takes to get you to go with them. That's how it ensnares and spray. It tricks you, and when you get lured away, it devours you. A horrific creature that shouldn't even exist. It has already gotten my friend. I couldn't convince him it wasn't real. I'm so sorry, Jared. I couldn't save him, and it doesn't look like I could save myself. I tried escaping, but my leg got caught on something and tore through my skin. I can't walk, and the door is so far away it seems. I'm writing this in hopes I can save whoever else is foolish enough to wander in here. So please, leave while you can. Terror just to describe how I felt finishing that last sentence. I almost fell into that trap. That Cassie girl, she managed to see whatever monster was behind all of this. Just like an anglerfish, it seems. It finds a way to grab our attention and lure us into its grasp. Kat was in danger. That much I knew was true. Even if it turned out that Tommy was really here, I now know that this creature was not just some scary story. It was the real deal. I rushed out of the room and back into the hall. I tried my best to jump and grab a hold of something on the second floor. It was just out of reach. Wasting no time, I ran to the other corridor that was just at the other end of the hall. I shined my light frantically in every room I came across, desperately trying to find a way up. Finally, I found what seemed like a bathroom, and upon looking, the ceiling was collapsed, which gave me an easy entrance to the second floor. Upon reaching the top, I heard screaming just around the corner, followed by a loud thud. That was Kat screaming, I thought to myself. Not knowing what to expect, I grabbed a plank of wood from some nearby rubble and turned off my light. I pressed myself up against the wall, and I quietly, but quickly, made my way to the source of the sound. I could see a faint light coming out from one of the rooms, and upon peeking in, I saw it was Kat's phone. It had dimly lit the room as it laid there face up. With what little light was in the room, I could make out that Kat was on the floor, but she wasn't moving. I could see some blood spots around her. She was definitely hurt. Not too far from her, I could see the monster. It looked exactly just as the old lady described in her story. Large pointed ears, terrifying fangs, pale gray skin, long arms with huge hands equipped with razor-sharp claws, and the lower half of its body was like that of a giant snake. It had a look of satisfaction as it slithered its way towards Kat. It was now or never, I thought. Taking advantage of the fact that it didn't know I was in the room with it, I clenched the plank tightly and rushed behind it. With all the strength I could muster, I slammed the wood on the back of its head. The impact was loud, and the plank shattered as it made contact. The creature spun around and struck me on the side, sending me flying towards the wall. It knocked the wind out of me. I could barely breathe, let alone try to stand back up. It let out a loud hiss as it grabbed me, its claws cutting into my skin as it clenched my shirt tightly. The pain was unbearable, but nothing compared to the terror I felt when I was face to face with it. I stared into its large, blank, wide eyes. I stared into the face of death. It opened its mouth wide, and a disgusting smell of rotten flesh hit me. I didn't know what to do, other than accept my fate. I closed my eyes, sobbing as I prayed that it would be quick. But then, I remembered. When I showed that illusion my cross, it lost all control over me and disappeared. Would it work the same way here? It was a long shot, but I had to try something. I quickly pulled my cross out and slammed it into the creature's hand that held me. A loud sizzle followed by the smell of burnt skin filled the air as the beast let go. From the way it screamed, I could tell I managed to hurt it. Using this to my advantage, I swiped Kat's phone and grabbed her, pulling her onto my back. I was still in immense pain, but there was no time to worry about that. I darted out of the room and got to the broken staircase. The door was in sight. There was no safe way to get down there, but just then, I heard the monster scream in frustration. I knew it had recovered and would soon catch up with us. I took a deep breath, ran toward the edge of the floor, and jumped. I managed to take most of the impact, but couldn't hold my grasp on Kat upon hitting the floor. I wanted to cry and yell, but the overwhelming fear and adrenaline forced me to ignore the pain. I scooped her back up in my arms and ran for the door. Behind me, I heard a loud bang. The monster was close, but I couldn't afford to turn around to check. We reached the door, and using the last little bit of energy I had left, I jumped off the porch and sprinted towards the street. Figuring we made it to safety, I decided to turn around and saw it standing in the doorway. It glared at me with such intensity and hatred. I could tell it was boiling with rage that I had escaped it. I was possibly the first person to do so in years, but for whatever reason, it didn't chase us. It was like there was some invisible barrier around the house, preventing it from leaving. It disappeared into the darkness as it closed the door slowly, never breaking its gaze on me. I looked down at Kat, debating on what to do next. She was still unconscious and needed to be treated for her nasty wounds. She had most likely tried to break the monster's illusion before it could do any serious harm to her. I could only assume that the beast struck her out of frustration. Only thing that prevented it from killing her was my intervention. I didn't want to think of what would have happened had I been a few seconds too late. I wondered if I should take her back to her house, but how would I explain this to Tommy if he woke up? I also thought of calling an ambulance, but I'd run into the same issue. Tell them that there's a monster in an abandoned house. They think I was insane. Do I tell them we were snooping around the house and she merely fell and got hurt? Screw it, I thought. As I stood back up with her in my arms, I decided just to head toward her house. Fortunately, it was unlocked. She probably didn't think she'd be gone for this long. I didn't hear any movements or sounds in the house as I quietly made my way to her living room. Tommy seemed to be asleep still, thankfully. After setting Kat down on the couch, I began to investigate the house, trying to find a bathroom and hopefully locate some medical supplies. Eventually, I was able to find some rags, rubbing alcohol, and a bottle of painkillers, and I began to treat her wounds as best as I could. After treating her wounds, as well as my own, I began to doze off, completely exhausted from today's events. I don't know how long I was asleep, as I was woken up by Kat shaking me softly. "Hey, are you alright?" she said with worried eyes. I couldn't tell if she had been crying or was about to. "Yeah, I guess I just had to rest for a bit. How's your wounds?" She put her hand over the treated areas as the morning sun began to shine outside. It seemed we both slept through the rest of the night. "It stings, but I think I'll be alright." We sat there in silence for a few minutes before I spoke up. Did we want to talk about what happened last night?" "I almost don't want to. I mean, what the hell was that?" she said in response. "I'm not sure. If it hadn't been for our wounds, I would have thought it was all a nightmare. I did want to find out what happened after we split up. Try your best to remember." She looked down for a moment before telling her story. "From what I recall, after tracking down Tommy, or well, what I thought was Tommy, I tried to calm him down from the argument we had a few moments earlier. But before I got too close, I got a message on my phone. It was my real brother texting me. He told me that he was going to get a glass of water before going to sleep, and he didn't want me thinking that he was just up and playing around. Never thought I'd be glad he always gets thirsty at bedtime. After reading it, the illusion began screaming and started falling apart into dust. I couldn't believe what I was seeing." She stopped for a moment, getting a little choked up. Despite it not being real, seeing a loved one like that really screws with you. I knew how she felt. I put my hand on her shoulder in an attempt at comforting her. It seemed to work as she finished her story. I just stood there, not knowing what to think. Before I could finish processing what happened, I heard a sickening hiss coming from behind me. When I turned around, I saw a creature for just a split second before it hit me. Next thing I know, we're both back at my house. We sat there in silence, with nothing really happening for those next few hours. I talked with her throughout that time before finally heading home myself. I couldn't sleep too well the following nights. If it wasn't for the fact that my body just shut down at Kat's house, I probably wouldn't have been able to fall asleep then either. I tried my best to get my mind off that dreadful night, but I had no luck. A few days later, I found out that Kat and Tommy were moving to the next town over. She invited me to come with them, but I just couldn't. At least, not yet. I wanted to talk to that old lady once more. But when I got to her house, I quickly found out that our little reunion wasn't going to happen. After knocking on her door several times, I heard a voice call out from behind me. "Excuse me, sir. Mind if I ask what you're doing here?" The voice was deep and very masculine. I turned to see an officer in his patrol car. "Hello, officer. I'm here to talk with the lady that lives here." Do you know her?" "Not really. We met just a few days ago. I wanted to ask her some questions." "Well, son, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but she disappeared last night." I stayed silent, being too confused and afraid of what could have happened to her to really say anything. We had gotten an anonymous phone call requesting that we check up on her, but when we arrived, the front door was open with no one home. You wouldn't know where she might have gone, would you? Or if you know anyone that would be responsible for her disappearance? "No, sir. I'm afraid I don't know much." "Alrighty then, but listen, if you find out anything, be sure to give us a call. Or come find me here. I'll be doing a few rounds down this street throughout the next couple of weeks in case anything turns up." "Will do." We both nodded at each other and he drove off. I looked over at the ominous house and something just clicked with me. I didn't really think about it until now, but I think I know what happened to her. I think she was the little girl from the story that she had told me. If I had to guess, she probably willingly wandered into that damn building. Why, I'm not sure. My only theory is that she couldn't live with what she had done any longer, leaving her brother behind to that creature, and so decided to let that same creature take her as well. I dared not mention this to the police, but instead hatched a plan of my own. A plan that I think will end this nightmare for good. I went home to get some supplies and patiently waited for the cover of night. I got back to the street where I talked with that officer, and just as he said, he was making his way past her house. Once I was sure he was completely out of sight, I made my move. I stood in the front yard, looking at the same porch that I had narrowly escaped from, and a shiver ran through my body. It was too late to get scared now. I had to do this. I clenched the bottle of alcohol in my right hand, and with my left, pulled out a lighter. I lit the end of the cloth as the flame made its way to the tip of the bottle. I raised my arm, ready to throw. Tonight, this town will finally be rid of the horror of House 623. Well, that certainly took a turn for the worse. I do recall on the news that a man recently set a house on fire. Surely a coincidence. These are just spooky stories after all. Or are they? Regardless, I hope you enjoyed the story. Seems like the rain has passed, so I'd head home now before it gets too late. Be safe out there, and avoid anything that tries to lure you into its grasps. And feel free to stop by anytime. I have plenty of stories to tell still. Good night, and stay spooky.